Добрый день, дорогие друзья. Москвич.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely lovely to see so many people here today. Today we are going to talk about some hyperlocality. We decided to gather here a bit earlier to work on the timing, to develop the schedule, but then we decided, let's just have an overall discussion. Let's just talk. About 500,000 people live inside the garden ring in Moscow. More than 12 million people live in Moscow, but we've gathered here to talk about hyperlocality. We have gathered here to discuss the life of 12 million people who do not live in the center. So usually we just develop something, we don't ask people what they want, and then if they like it, then we continue doing the same thing. So let me just introduce all of the speakers. Vadim Izotov, head of the Department of Development and Support of Special Electronic Products of Andrei Burdin, the founder of Chisto. Ekaterina Halecka, the co-founder of Impact Hub Moscow, and Andrei Sazonov, deputy CEO of Crossed. I would like to ask Andrei first. Andrei, since you're a developer, can you answer me this? When you're building, let's say, a new residential project, does the mayor's office tell you how to do that? So, since I'm the only developer here, and we usually develop whole districts or quarters, so it's usually a whole project. So let me tell you that Moscow is changing. And of course, the Moscow city government usually gives us certain ideas, or they have certain restrictions. If you look at the center of Moscow, then you can notice that the number of cars that are parked in the center has gone down drastically. Has anybody noticed it? I'm sorry for interrupting you. So because we do not have so many cars in the center, they're not choking our pedestrian areas, people have more spaces to walk about, to enjoy the city. And that is something that we are trying to replicate in the suburbs. We started doing it as far back as the year 2000. We all remember the 1990s when we had such a high crime rate that all we did is just to run very quickly to the car, get in, lock yourself in, drive away, and get out of the car and run quickly into the house. God forbid something happens to you, you get attacked. But our economic situation improved. The situation with crime in the city has improved. And people started coming out of their cars, coming out of their houses. Once they came out, they really didn't like what they saw. That's why we started developing car-free projects. Once we started doing car-free developments, people actually started spending more time outside. They started using all of the functions that we offer to them in our residential projects. Apart from mothers who walk their babies in strollers, we also have tennis courts, we have gym areas, we have workout zones, we have certain points of attraction, we have sculptures, we have street art, we display pixelated art, we do something that's is interesting for people. More than that, we started developing long lawn building. What is it? Basically, this is just a covered gallery that goes around the whole project. In this gallery, you can find cafes, you can find key services, you can find a dance studio, you can find workshops, you can find doctors' offices. So basically everything that people who live in this project might possibly need.
Any store has a good turnover, so this store can pay higher rental. Any children minded a care center is not that financially stable. It would like to have a lower rental. And so the security and safety of building has some specific requirements. So we need to diversify. We need to organize. We need to optimally fill the quarter with the function. So people should get interested in staying there. So here we're discussing much commuting migration from the center to the center. So have about 25,000 people constantly attending different events in this quarter. During the World Cup last year, we had large screens in the center of our quarters, neighborhoods, had some bags, some chairs, and people watched football in their neighborhoods. It was a very interesting project. This is kind of feeling of shoulder. So when someone scores, so the fan really were all together. Neighbors started to drink beer, to be together. It's kind of a living organism for this neighborhood, which is a good place to live at. The main message from the Moscow government is to provide for good living conditions in a neighborhood. That's what we're working on. Everything you have been talking about is a kind of a forced solution, or is it a business solution? You cannot force anything right now. So the residents of neighborhoods have chats. People communicate with each other. We create an event, and residents don't like this event, and they propose their own one. For example, saxophone evenings. We wouldn't even think of that. That's what they created. That's what we invented. We invited the singers, and this is a successful event at what was developed by the residents themselves. Thank you very much. Vadim, I called the government of Moscow, talked to a chatbot, so she didn't understand me ideally, but this is a miracle. As I just read the novels of Jules Verne, Wells, it was a science fiction. Now it is reality. So what are miracles in the future? The most interesting thing that for you it's a miracle, but for a younger generation this is quite a normal reality. New normality. So we are expecting seamless nature of technologies. What we consider miracle and what used to be true miracle for our parents. We do not see a mobile phone as a miracle when you can call someone some FaceTime and see a person. So the question is not how the development of this technology is going to occur, whether this technology is going to separate people, combine people, bring these people together. In most cases, modern technologies, starting from your own personal car, start to separate people. Somehow it's good. You remember great underground rolling stocks or commuting trains which brought together in 80s and 90s. And then they got separated and started to use their own personal cars. Step by step, they ceased their meetings in person. They just communicate through such as. Is it bad? Of course, it is bad phenomenon, since a human being is a social being. So why you use not only non-verbal but verbal skills as well. So since people cannot read these emotions, non-verbal signals, it impacts the communication itself and the people themselves. They are more and more like those soulless robots. Unlike a human, robot cannot read the emotions. And the person, the human being, does it through the genetics. We believe that the technologies should bring people together. We've developed our application, and the idea is to gradually, through the technologies and the services for the neighborhood, to bring people together. Therefore, we're going to develop the neighborhood concept, where the cafes, restaurants, fitness centers, gyms, and hospitals, the technologies that will create communities within the neighborhood. There is not only the real world, there is a digital world as well. We need to bring these worlds together. I entered my city, 1.4 million, 1.8 million problems have been solved. Now it's like a kind of an order book. My smart city and my smart neighborhood. This is the channel for digital communication. Smart city is a kind of order book, but this is not a book of complaints. This is a chat bot. You complain first, it collects the information, knowledge-based system. The more problems there are, we know the fewer stories going through the most difficult way in the future. So technologies are to bring people together and to be so seamless, invisible, not even to think of the ideas. When we have contactless payment on our public transport, you don't even think of technologies when you use just your cell phone to pay for public transport. You know, the algorithm is very difficult, actually. Andrei Burdin, founder of Chista company. Today I have read about you. So I have trash, I call you, just come to us, you pay me some money, and you take the garbage and you leave. What is business? The business is that we take garbage at cheap rates, and we get to those special recycling facilities who pay money for that. So we work on the volumes, economies of scale. So your previous Marine, former Marine, dedicated your life to design. How did you decide to start such unconventional business like garbage collection? I searched for smart. You know, in Kaluga, the environment started to worsen. You know, I didn't want to protest. I decided to look into possibilities of technologies, what can be done. And we thought of separate garbage collection. That's what we started to do, is conventional social entrepreneur. Can you call yourself like that? Where did you take money? I'm sorry for this personal question. Did the city assist? No, I used my own money. And now what is your position right now? Now we are starting to work with the garbage from Detsky Mir. You have an agreement with Detsky Mir, trial agreement. They have 110 outlets in Moscow. Last week we signed agreement with the Mercury hotel chain. There was Bakhrushin garbage collection. We collected 836 kilograms at one spot. This is a big amount for one spot. From Kolomna to Detsky Mir. No, you can deliver this garbage to different areas beyond Moscow. Something should be done. We have a solution. I've managed to shape presentation today. Are you going to tell us about this? Yes, I'm going to do that. First of all, the story with Chista is about big data. We started to collect big data, and we have huge table matrix which should be filled in by the users. It's about 40 questions in this questionnaire, and all questions should be answered. And it turned out that there were some people who were ready to spend money on filling in the tables, but people who fight for ecology, for environment, started to fill in these tables. We have data which give us all the information how much particular material a family consists of 3 people from Omsk accumulate, what the plastic waste is, what the glass waste is. We have big data on garbage. This is a unique thing which nobody in our country has. So based on that, we started to look into different models. What can be done? So we've used about 12 different models of interaction, and we found the most convenient one, the model which I'm going to tell you about right now. That's what you see, which you can reduce by 50%. This is absolutely true. We have figures for those working with us. They can prove that we are reducing garbage by half. We have the most convenient garbage bins which can be found on the market. They are not that ugly, so people like them. We developed a platform with interface like that, where we collected data. I'd like you to tell you specifically about that. I'm just watching you. We've developed a platform which allows, at the level of municipality, or operating companies, to do some things. Moscow can reduce the garbage. The platform has all the information about the volume of garbage of this secondary material. Yesterday I had a meeting with Tinkoff representatives. They wanted to integrate the payment system inside our platform. They do understand that there is something big is going to happen out of this project. We're just moving from the gray zone to the white zone. All these recyclable materials in the country, it's not all white. Even the big recycling facilities, which you can see on the news, they're not working kind of following the white schemes. It should be cleaned. Some kind of cleansing should be in place. We've developed a company which is called Small Power Machines. We can generate energy out of garbage not through combustion but using the pyrolysis method. It means that the garbage is heated without the oxygen and it turns into fuel. It can be liquid fuel, it can be gas fuel, which we use in our cars. This is pyrolysis process. Everything which is thrown away, including tiny package of any product, everything has rubber or plastic, can be turned into power, and through this pyrolysis process the industrial waste is much less compared with the combustion approach. These are our cars. In Russia-Africa Forum, everyone wanted to work with us. That's it. Let me get back to tell Andrei what I wanted to offer him, cross-company particularly. Just look at that. This is too much, you know. Networking is networking, but maybe you can continue your talk after the roundtable. The speaker is not using the mic. This is the attempt for your neighborhoods to throw away garbage. Let's give it a try. It's a good idea. We know that if we have a developer which does business and has some directions from the government of Moscow to provide for comfortable living conditions, and there is a business which renders services to the residents, and there are some residents who feel comfortable at living in their neighborhood. If they want to go somewhere to the center, they go to some cultural sites, and all other things can be acquired in their neighborhood. But we do understand that the demand from residents should be. They understand that something is wrong in their world, they see the problem, they try to solve this problem, and they start to become social entrepreneurs. That's what happened to you, Ekaterina. So the question is, I created something which can help my neighbors to live better. I started to take care of a grandma. Technological approaches. How can I start? I have even a target audience, initial target audience. How can I start my own business? Nikita, thank you very much for the question. I'm a co-founder and director of Impact Hub, and we are helping such entrepreneurs as Andre and social entrepreneurs to turn the idea of changing the world into some kind of business case. I give you a story how such entrepreneur can emerge and develop. This is one of my favorite examples. The example from Pushkin city, from Leningrad region, the project which is called Among Us. Fedosova and Sheremet, they were volunteers in psychoneurological asylum in Pushkin city, and they knew which difficulties these patients face. At the same time, they understood that these people are like us, they can work, and they created to involve them in labor activity to get some revenue, and they gave the idea of such a job opportunity for the patients from this asylum. Under the instructions of our specialists, they stopped on special cereals, and now these cereals are sold in 4 big outlets in St. Petersburg. Veganica, for instance. This is the Hyperlocality initiative in a small city with a difficult situation where cross company is not represented yet. But in such a difficult environment, there were some people who didn't want to stay indifferent, so they decided to undertake the responsibility to do something. So the contest, which has some time constraints, which you had to apply for to give the full description, it allowed them to structure their project, and it's kind of an incentive which gave them impetus to move forward. Our experts widened their mindset and understanding of what kind of business model can be used and what product to sell. From my perspective, to single out people like that, people with ideas, is one of the pivotal tasks. This is the first step which we may take in our neighborhoods. And these peoples are not single. As we say, the birds of one flock get together, so now incubator we have about 30 projects annually. Another example of the winner of Social Impact Award, Guzel Sanjapova, developed in the rural area out of bee producing facilities. Now they have a good community center, and the settlement consisting of 20 people started to live appropriately. And Guzel Sanjapova, after talking to our residents, Explore Russia tourist company, which brings foreign tourists to Russia, they thought about the possible stop in Maui Turshe in the Ural Mountains. Why not to go to Maui Turish? How this rural area settlement lives like. That's the tour provided now in the photo. You can see French family making caramels and just trying to understand how people in this village live. Such types of collaboration can exist when there is an appropriate environment for that, when people just have good relations, and based on the common interests, they can support each other. And they create the products which may business profitable. That's the algorithm developed for us. So not I'm going to give you the algorithm precisely, but when you have a platform, when you have an environment, and there are the right people who cannot feel indifferent, and where there is a connection between them, this is the recipe we are ready to offer.
And it's absolutely great when big businesses start supporting these projects. We do have an experience with working with Rosbank, who supported such projects all over Russia. Andrei, when you decide on how you're going to progress with your development, do you think about small businesses? Where will you have the hairdressers? Where are you going to have a coffee shop? Absolutely. Our company is more than 20 years old, and we always had an opportunity to talk to small businesses or medium-sized businesses, businesses which lease properties in our developments. So that's what we did. We talked to different businesses, and we expanded on their experience. We have this case of a tiny cafe that became extremely successful, and it is really known in the neighborhood for the quality of its food and the service. So we use these experiences and we replicate it in other developments of our company. You said it correctly that Moscow used to be the city of loners. When people came to Moscow around the turn of the millennium, they didn't really have people to talk to. People come to Moscow from other parts of Russia. They might not have friends here. So they start creating different communities based on common interests, based on what they enjoy doing. And when my son asks me, "Dad, what is the best place to live?" I always tell him, the best place to live is the place that makes you happy. And I tell him about our development. Vladimir, what do you think? What is the right way to work with these tiny communities, tiny local communities? I think the best way to work with local communities is by creating very comfortable environment. Technologies help us to create a new type of environment. An environment which benefits urban districts, which benefits towns or even villages, as we just saw. Technologies are great. They have people from France to learn about a village 200 kilometers away from St. Petersburg. And 200 kilometers is quite a distance for Europe. People who work in tech, we always try to develop all of our products for ourselves, primarily. I think that's why our apps are so successful, because we are using them as well. Everybody knows the Troika transport card. You know that there is an app that allows you to put the money on the card, so you don't need to queue for your metro tickets. So this app is very successful because we made it very easy to use. Today, we talked a lot about communities, and everybody said that happiness can only be achieved through community life. So how do we create communities? Are there a lot of people who live in Moscow? When was the last time that somebody read their local district newspaper? Oh, there are people who did that. Was there something that was memorable there? Was there something that impressed you? You know that regular paper that you get in your mail? It's not digital, it's like old school, on paper. So, see, I also don't remember that I read anything interesting in my local paper. But I think that these local papers should be interesting. They should talk to people who live in a certain area. They should inform the people. But, of course, these newspapers is basically a corporate publication of the government. So they will not talk a lot about problems and so on and so forth. But you know that we have Facebook groups or WhatsApp chats for, let's say, our building or the area of Moscow that we live in, and where we discuss problems and issues. There are quite cool things that people are doing online, and there is the MOS newspaper, krylatska.ru, and these online media are not favored by municipal authorities because you cannot control them. It's not clear to the government how to talk to them. But these online communities are very important for people who live in local areas, for people who live in these neighborhoods. But I think that we should find something common for all of these online media. These online media are trusted by people who live in Moscow neighborhoods. So maybe that can be a way to create a community, to create a dialogue between the governments and the people who live in certain communities, so that the government can support these people. Ekaterina, can you also give us another example of a community? Well, I can give you wonderful examples of such collaborations. This is an example of Krasnodar. There is a museum in Krasnodar. I don't really remember the exact name of the museum. But we have a team of activists, a team of museum specialists who worked on selecting new design for the museum. So they invited designers whom they met using our platform. So when the museum was opened after redesign, and during the redesign they used a lot of new materials, I think a lot of members of our community actually traveled there to see it with their own eyes. I think that when people are working on a common goal, they are ready to invest in each other's projects, and they do not expect any return on the investments. It's like, I help you out, you help me out, and it's a great opportunity to work together on something. That's an interesting story. Vladimir, this robot who picked up my call, right, so this answering machine, it replaced a human being. So what are we going to do with people who are left without jobs? They're not going to become Uber drivers, because Uber is also introducing driverless cars. Well, we cannot really have a society without humans. What makes humans really stand apart from all other animals is because humans can learn really quickly and they can adapt to any conditions. I believe that people who graduated from universities, a lot of these people today do not actually work in the profession that they study. For instance, I am an engineer, a mathematician, but that's not what I'm doing now. So we are all changing, the technology is changing, but what becomes very important are soft skills and the way we interact with people. If somebody can interact with people really well, they will not work in a call center, but maybe there will be somebody who will be testing the performance of that robot, because robots also need to be trained. I think we're going to see it in all sectors, in all industries, but I think Russia is not the country that will have this massive unemployment because of the rise of technology. Andrei, when you started your business, have you tried talking to charities, or have you applied for grants? No, never. Why is that? Well, usually because it takes a long time and a lot of effort, but in the end you don't really get much. Ekaterina, what do you think? Was it the right decision? Well, on one hand, yes, it's a good thing, because it's a good thing that when people only rely on themselves. But on the other hand, I believe when during the initial stage of the project, you can use grant financing to gain additional leverage. You shouldn't get addicted to grants, but they do help at the start. How hard is it to get a grant? Let's say I'm a tiny business and I want to get a grant of 1.5 million rubles to open a coffee shop. Well, you know, it's not that hard. We had financial support at the launch stage, because we're an independent center. So we got about the same amounts when we started out. So was it a government grant? No, that was a grant from a commercial company. But if you know which company to contact and how to come up with a nice proposal that actually is suitable for certain companies, for their commercial values, and how do you do that? Well, then you have to attend forums like this one. You have to get to know people. You have to find a person who works in a certain company who will be very sympathetic to your idea and who can take it up to the management. Where do people get the money? Well, you just go to Moscow City. There are a lot of businesses there. Let me answer this. If we're talking about employment, then our development company is not just about construction. We also have 18 manufacturing sites. Our manufacturing sites take part in many urban projects. So we organize festivals. The city of Moscow organizes street festivals. And I want to say that to organize a festival in one of our projects, we need people who will be managing it. We will need people who will do the actual work. And one of the communities of residents in our projects launch a festival, and with time they expanded, and now they are doing festivals in also other communities, and we do support them in this. This is something that creates community life. But people can also make money doing this festival. It's not just volunteer work. Yes, of course, during this festival, people come to sell things. So for instance, we have Mardi Gras. Well, to have Mardi Gras, you need to make pancakes, so you need to buy some flowers and make some milk. Yeah, so we help with that. We pay for that. But this is how small businesses develop in our neighborhoods, in our projects. Some people live and work in the same residential area, and they never have to leave, especially because there are so many cool events there. Well, we don't have that much time left. Can you please tell me, how will Moscow 2030 look? How will the quality of life change, and how will people change? People who will live in Moscow. Moscow 2030, what do you think it's going to be like? Let me just repeat it one more time. Moscow keeps changing. We have a lot of people coming from other countries. We have people from other cities. All of the delegates of this forum agree with me in saying that Moscow is changing very rapidly and it's changing much faster than all other cities in the world. And that is something that you can hear when you're talking to people, you can hear when attending forums like this one. But In the recent years, all of the efforts were concentrated on the Moscow city center. But the situation is changing today. For instance, the northeastern district or the southern district of Moscow is changing quite a lot. But we're not just a developing company, we're also a manufacturing company. We do have 18 manufacturing sites, so we supplied construction materials for different urban projects. Let me just talk about the northeastern district of Moscow. We supply our construction materials to a number of new parks. We supply them for the installation of street art that people use to make selfies, to publish these pictures on the social media. Therefore, we are creating new local city centers, and that is something that is changing Moscow quite a lot. Moscow is becoming the place where people are happy to live in their neighborhoods, and I think it's great. I will continue what Andrei just mentioned. I would like to see Moscow 2030 to have different neighborhoods for more affluent people, but also neighborhoods which help and support people who are in a more difficult situation, people who have problems, who have physical problems, who have restricted mobility. Sometimes we do not even notice them because they don't leave their apartments due to lack of accessible environments. So I do hope that that is something that will change in Moscow 2030, and we will have ideal neighborhoods in Moscow 2030. Andrei. What really worries me is that people are still driving a lot of cars, and I'm worried that in 2030 we're going to have even more cars, so they will continue building more roads, or we will have even more traffic jams. So I do hope that there'll be pilot projects and we'll end up with, I don't know, flying cars. No, I don't think that's ever going to happen in Moscow, but I do believe we'll have fewer traffic jams due to the development of public transportation, due to the introduction of more and more bus lanes, due to the introduction of paid-for parking. I think that we will develop free parking lots so that people get out of their cars and use the metro. But this problem, I think, will be solved in Moscow, but I think it might become a problem of other cities, such as Yaroslavl. But the center of Moscow really is quite accessible. We will have central Moscow diameters. We will have a lot of transportation, so we think that it'll be easier for people to get to their place of work. Do you think that VTB's central office will be located somewhere in Galyanovo, on the outskirts of Moscow? Well, let me correct you. The central office of VTB is located in St. Petersburg, but in Moscow, the Moscow branch of VTB is located in Moscow City. This is a financial center. But I think that a lot of things, such as I don't know, different government agencies or businesses will move out of the city center, and maybe even during business days, we will see a lot more people just strolling through city center rather than hurrying to work. I believe that we'll have fewer cars, people will own fewer cars, and I think the environment will improve. We all agree that Moscow should be decentralized, and the districts outside of Moscow should not be worse than the Garden Rig, Inserin Khaletsk, Andrei Sazonov, Vadim Burdin. Thank you very much.
Слушайте, ну давайте попробуем поработать.